Good morning. Quick little disclaimer, this will be a video for my game design class. With that out of the way, today I will be talking about Enter the Gungeon, which is a roguelite bullet hell dungeon crawler released on April 5th, 2016, developed by Dodgeball Studios and published by Devolver Digital. This game is playable on PC, console, and recently mobile. This game has an ESRB rating of T, and with all that little bit of information out of the way, let's get on and talk about Moving on, core game mechanics. So the player, depending on what platform they are, they'll either have to use a controller, keyboard and mouse, or if they're on mobile, they'll have to use their fingers. I don't really know what else they would use. Maybe their tongue or something. I don't know. The game is also completely in 2D, technically. See, actually I learned this recently, but the game is actually 3D. It's just that the developers of the game have made it like seem 2D. I don't really know how that works, but I think that's something really cool. It's just kind of interesting, I guess, little fun facts. Some of the actual core gameplay mechanics themselves are, going through a dungeon, looking for items and weapons. You can add these to like an index when you find them, and you can find them in later runs to use again. There's also a dodge roll, which grants you iframes throughout the entirety of the animation, which will make you immune to all forms of damage except for just falling into a pit. And the final thing would just be firing or swinging a weapon to just kill an enemy. I don't really know what else you would do. There is technically one more major gameplay mechanic, which is the shop. The shop is actually a really crucial part of the game because it allows you to buy more health or more blanks, which can stop all of the bullets. And you can also find weapons and ammo crates and guns occasionally. The shop is really important. However, you can lose it permanently if you shoot in the shop 3 times. The final thing is game progression. The game is a roguelike, which means that every time you jump into the dungeon, basically, your goal is to finish it and beat the pasts of the characters. And each time you do a run of the game, you're gonna die over and over and over, where you can learn the mechanics of how the enemies work, their patterns. And you can find more items and weapons so that you can use in later runs so that you have an easier time to beat the game. And that's essentially how this game is structured in its progression. Next section, art and visual style. The world and the characters within Enter the Gungeon are really pixelated and 8-bit and cartoony, as you've probably seen in all of the clips and everything else I've shown beforehand. The progression of the game itself, though, as you progress through the game and you get further and further through the levels or the floors or whatever would you like to consider them, the breach or the lobby of the game begins to fill up with NPCs that you can talk with and interact with. You also get new characters or Gungeoneers to play as, and there's also various trophies to show for your achievements in progressing further in the game and beating new challenges. Also, another really cool thing is that the characters that you play as can actually get cosmetics to wear if you beat their pasts twice. However, the game doesn't really have a specific color palette, and as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure it uses every color in the spectrum. However, the majority of the game is just relatively dark and gritty, like the dungeon that you see in the background. And it's just contrasted by bright and colorful weapons and characters. Personally, I think this choice was made by the developers to give the game kind of a cartoony or arcade-ish feel. And this kind of affects the player experience because it kind of lets them see what a indie game that's not made by some top paid AAA game studio would be like. Basically, essentially how it compares to modern games. Maybe a good example would be Red Dead Redemption 2. On to the next section, sounds and music. Now this will probably be my personal favorite section. I don't know about the rest of you, but to begin, the soundtrack of the game was created by Dose One, who was a kind of underground rapper. We'll go with that. And the majority of the soundtrack was likely created using synthesizers, drums, and various sound effects similar to that to create this cartoony soundtrack. Well, not even cartoony, just like really, I guess, we'll go with exciting. It's really like kind of heavy. And all of the soundtrack has 0 lyrics except for the one part that I played towards the beginning of the video where it said Enter the Gungeon, which that entire thing is like 5 minutes long. The soundtrack, generally speaking, changes per like floor or chamber as the game calls it. And it also changes depending on like specific events like the credits scene or boss fights in the game, and some boss fights will have their own special soundtracks, like the boss fight of the Resourceful Rat or the R&D department boss, which I cannot remember his name for the life of me. The soundtrack is, honestly speaking, just really fast-paced and really exciting, and you can probably hear it right now. This is the soundtrack for the 4th chamber, the Hollow. And this is crazy. I love this. And it's fantastic when you're fighting through like hordes of enemies. And the sound effects in general and the music are just very, very like loud. And just whether it be like the gunfire from the weapons, or the sounds of enemies, or even the player getting hit, or even like little things like cursed pots around the map breaking, all of them are like just really, really loud, and everything's just really intense, and it's kind of almost like just keep you focused in the moment. Part 5, Narrative and Storytelling. The story of the game is relatively simple. It only really talks about things like the past of the characters, as well as the situation within the Gungeon itself. The story of the game is mainly told through dialogue from the characters. However, there are elements of the story that can be found from the world of the game, such as like paintings around the map, or just like small things scattered around the map that can tell you about what has happened. The characters in the story can actually change their own stories, or their pasts, as the game refers to them. And that is actually a major plot point in the game, and is essentially the goal of the entire game, to go back into the past as the characters and rewrite their stories by defeating their pasts. This is, like, a good theme to take away from all of this would probably be something along the lines of redemption, as you have to go back into the past with each individual character and defeat their past to rewrite it and fix their wrongs. And I personally love this. A great example, which is spoilers, that would be of the past of one of the characters would be the pilot, where the pilot's past, you go back into the past and save his friend from being killed by some like enemy spaceship Foundation thing. It's never really explained a ton of what it is. But moving on with that, actually, there's a really interesting theory that I'd like to bring up, and it's that one of the bosses in the game, Gatling Gull, is actually his friend from his past, but just gone down like a dark path. Part 6, the final part of this video, player experience and emotional impact. Without a shadow of a doubt, I confidently believe that the intended player experience in this game was to make the player suffer. I've played this game since maybe 2017, maybe like a year after its release, and the amount of times I've died to stupid little things in this game is ridiculous, whether it be like a stray bullet from across the map, or a pit that I rolled into on accident. It is ridiculous. This game goes out of its way to force you to become the best player possible, because if you don't, this game just isn't going to be fun at all. And throughout the game, the player will likely feel a variety of emotions, including despair, anger, and especially joy. It ultimately just depends on what the player has to deal with at that current moment. However, I will say that by the end of the game, I personally feel that no matter who you are, you'll feel some sense of completion. You'll feel fulfilled with the game having finally been over, and with everything that you've been working so hard to get to being done. Or at the very least, that's what I felt when I finished my first run of this game, and as well as every single other run of this game that I've completed. A sense of completion. Alright, so I know the video is technically over, but I just wanted to quickly give out my thanks to everybody who actually paid attention and watched the video, and listen to me rant for like 10 minutes straight, thank you so much. I have spent so much time punching over a desk to learn how to edit so I could actually make this video on this game that I love so much, and I hope that after this, some of y'all might even actually consider giving the game a try. Also, really quickly, I'm going to put up a image on the screen to show like my run stats for the background gameplay footage that has been playing throughout the entire video, because that is a run that I actually did of the game since I had to restart it completely recently. Anyways, thank you and have a great rest of your day.